Hi everyone, this is Julianne Victoria of Through the Peacock's Eyes. Welcome to my channel. So in this vlog discussion video, I'm going to talk about something that many people have asked me to talk about. I was just waiting till it felt right, till I felt mostly healed. And that is my difficult pregnancy, my traumatic labor, which ended in an emergency C-section, and some of the healing that I've had to go through since then. Before I get into it, I do want to put it out there that if you are pregnant now, especially if it's your first pregnancy, or you came to this video, you found my channel because of the topic of this video, and you're hoping to get pregnant, yet you're afraid of labor pain, or you're someone who, you have to judge for yourself, tends to take on other people's difficult experiences and fret about it and think you'll have to experience the same, then don't watch this video. Turn it off. If you are pregnant and you're someone of a tougher constitution, I guess I would say, and you're looking for tips, inspiration on managing any challenges, difficulties you might have with pregnancy or labor, you can continue on, but do judge for yourself. If it starts to scare you, turn the video off, because really my experience is what I would think, well, what I would have thought would have been my worst nightmare. Okay, so I want to put that out there. It's not if you're pregnant or afraid of labor or anything like that. Okay, you can turn this video off at any time. Now, as I talk, I don't know how long this is going to take. It might have to end up being a few videos. I'm just going to talk and see how far I get. So let's get started. So I have to start with before I was pregnant. My life, kind of. Because it all sort of ties in. So when I was really little, 4 or 5 years old, I had this feeling that in a recent past life or past lives, and I did not grow up in a home where the topic of past lives was brought up. It's just something I felt within myself, that I had passed away in childbirth or due to childbirth. I had this strong feeling. And I'm pretty sure I know what that lifetime was, but that's a totally different topic. So I always had that feeling. And there was a brief period when I was really young, like 5, 6 years old, probably around that same time, where I thought, oh, I don't want to have kids. But that was just then. Now, also, both my grandmothers had multiple C-sections. So my dad's mother had 2. And my mother's mother had 3 C-sections, and that was in the 30s and 40s. And my mom's mom was actually the first person known to survive to have 3 successful cesareans. So she was written up in like medical journals and so on. Excuse me. So stories about, their C-sections, not detailed stories, but like when you talk about family stories, like it would come up. It wasn't made a big deal. It was just part of this family stories when you sit around the dinner table talking about things. So it was known. And I always felt, or I always thought to myself, when I heard those stories, I just knew that I would likely have to have C-sections or cesareans as well. Just a feeling I had, my intuition. You could say my psychic knowing, but I just had that feeling. Though I thought, when the time comes, when I have kids, I'll just take as best care of myself as I can and hope for the best. So I always had those feelings. Now, moving on in time, in my 20s, early 30s, I could see, I used to have a vision of a little girl, especially in my 30s. And I felt that there was this soul waiting for me. And I always knew it would be born as a little girl, and I could see her. Now it's interesting because my little girl now looks a lot like the vision I had. So I felt like I was supposed to have at least one child, and it would be a girl. And if people asked me, like, do you want kids? I would say 1, maybe 2, depending on how the first one went. So again, I had this feeling that it wouldn't be so easy. Yeah. So into my late 30s, excuse me, 37, 38. That point, I'm single. Few long-term relationships didn't work out. Um, I was not in a position, nor did I want to just have a child on my own. And at that age, your chances of getting pregnancy start to drop pretty quickly each year that goes on. So I consciously grieved away having children. I didn't like slam the door and say it's never going to happen now. But I had to, for me, I had to consciously grieve that away. Because I was entering into a time in my life where I was taking, I'll say, another trip through the underworld. I was selling my home, which because of the market, I really sold for nothing, closed down my thriving healing practice to move back to California, basically to start from scratch. And part of me kind of knew, but consciously I didn't want it to be that I went back to do healing concerning my parents, ancestral healing, and a whole lot of stuff there. But again, that's another topic. So I was going into a time when I knew I wasn't going to be in a position to even think about a relationship, let alone have children. And, by the time I moved back to California, I was 38, and I thought, okay, it can happen, but I have to continue to consciously grieve that away. I can't be clinging to, I'm supposed to have a child because I felt I was supposed to have a child. Plus, it's like, I could be totally wrong. Though trusting my intuition has been something I've been working on for years. So it's one, I trust my intuition, but I also have to not to cling to what my intuition is telling me, because nothing's totally set in stone either. So I grieve that away. And there was like this weekend, I think it was Memorial Day weekend, I think in 2012, 2012, I think so, where I cried the whole weekend. Like, just water was pouring out of my face as I was going through this process. So then in my journey into the underworld, I spent much longer in the family home. I ended up taking care of my mother, who had Alzheimer's. She passed away. My dad got cancer. He survived, but I was his main caretaker. And so in that time, I really just released the whole idea of having children. Again, I didn't totally slam the door. I was like, well, if I meet someone, and it's even possible at this point, because by then I'm 41. It's there, but I felt pretty okay with not having children. Not that I was someone like desperately had children. I just had this feeling I was going to have at least one child. I have animals, and that satisfies that mothering part of me. So I was pretty okay with it. And at 41, that's when I moved down here to the Santa Barbara area. I was really thinking about just committing to being single, just kind of stepping into the crone, into the hermit that I kind of naturally am, and just going with that. Again, I didn't slam the door in relationship, left the possibility there, but I really was liking the idea of living alone again and really just seeing what I can create by myself. So I was in a really good place by myself. And then a few months after I had moved here, 2 months after I had moved here, and I moved here in 2015, I met the person who I would end up marrying at the dog park of all places. Okay, so a year later we get married, and we had talked about, having children, and he really wanted to have kids, and I was like, well, I'm open to it. We'll see what happens. At that point, I'm 42, and the chances of getting pregnant were like less than 1%. The chances of maintaining that pregnancy to 12 weeks are like 10% of that 1%. So the odds weren't good. The chance of genetic defects and all sorts of things that could go on were pretty high. But it's like, well, we'll just open it up and see if it could happen. So things up to this point are going pretty well. As soon as we opened it up, I think it was like 2 months later, I was pregnant, and I kind of knew that that was a good window because of the astrology. So for those who came here because of the pregnancy video and don't know my channel or me, I'm a spiritual life coach, an astrologer, an intuitive, or you can even say psychic. Though I don't go around predicting the play-by-play of everyone's life. That's not interesting. It's the life coaching, the spiritual counseling that I'm interested in. But anyway, I knew astrologically it was actually a window of possibility where it could happen. So anyway, that's another topic too. So up to that point, great. I knew I was pregnant before I, knew I was pregnant. I could feel it. Like, I think I knew the first week. I already felt sick. I could feel stuff going on. So right away, I wasn't feeling good. And that's normal for first trimester, right? You feel nauseous, you feel sick, you're tired. But for me, it started there and it just got worse and worse for 9.5. You're really pregnant, like 10 months, 41.5 weeks. So, okay, now we're starting the unpleasantry, so the pregnancy. My first trimester, I was nauseous most of the time, very low energy, could barely function. Yeah, I gained the most weight in my pregnancy in the first trimester, which is highly unusual. Usually that's the third trimester. And I wasn't eating a ton more either. So that was kind of the first indication that things were hormonally off. I also got sick, like around 12, 14 weeks. And the congestion from that cold never went away until after I'd given birth, like a few months after. So that, okay, my camera shut off. So I think I was saying the congestion lingered on until long after I'd given birth. It took a long time for this nasal stuff to clear out. And for those who don't know, when you're pregnant, your immune system is suppressed as well. So I think that had something to do with it. But I was also, my hormones, I think, were just so out of whack. Now, I also had this weird sensation that didn't have to do with the nasal congestion, although I'm sure that impacted it. I had this feeling throughout my pregnancy that I just couldn't get in enough air. Now, a lot of women get shortness of breath, mostly in the third trimester because of the pressure on their rib cage. But this was just like, I felt like air wasn't getting down my throat. It was really like, I knew I was breathing, my rib cage was just expanding, but it was a sensation that I was suffocating all the time. So that was just miserable. We had to run the house fan. We have a fan to circulate air through the whole year, even through the winter. Because if the air was cold, I felt like I could breathe better. It was just a horrible sensation, and it was really difficult to be in cars because that just made it all worse. And it wasn't like claustrophobia. It was just like I needed to breathe cold air, or I felt like I wasn't breathing. So that was really unpleasant. And then, yeah. So smells, nearly all smells, sounds, certain voices, even my husband's voice made me nauseous. It was almost like too much sensory input, and I felt sicker and sicker and sicker. So it just made for a very miserable pregnancy. On top of that, again, from the first trimester through the whole pregnancy, I had so low energy. And a lot of you will say, how was your iron? My iron was fine. Blood work, all great. Even though I felt sick all the time, I didn't feel much like eating. I had no cravings during my pregnancy. But, and I find this normally totally annoying to do, I tracked everything I ate to make sure I was getting all the nutrition I needed. And I would just force feed and just make sure I got in what the baby and I needed. So blood work turned out fine. My nutrition was great. I was getting everything I needed, but I had no energy. Most days, I would just lie on the couch. I'd get up, do, some things. I'd take a nap. It would take me an hour to get up from napping or from sleeping at night, about an hour to get enough strength to actually get up and get to the bathroom. And I would like drink water while I was trying to get strength to get up. And I was hydrating really well, but I just didn't have energy. And this is my belief. It went undetected, but I think I had gestational hypothyroid. I just couldn't move. If I did anything like walk the dogs, which I tried to do twice a week, and before that I would walk them 2 to 3 times a day. So that tells you how little energy I had. But my desire to take care of them could override enough. And once I got moving, it was a little bit better. But I would walk so slow. I mean, I do the same walks now twice as fast. And I'm not even walking that fast. And I felt like I was walking fast when I was pregnant. So I think hormonally, I was hypothyroid from a friend of mine who has hypothyroidism. Like normally, it's like exactly what she experiences when she's not on medication. And I brought up being really, really tired to my doctor, and she just kind of laughed it off. I should have pushed it and discussed it more. But at the same time, looking back, I would have been put under all these other tests, probably been on medication. That might have had a problem. Maybe not, I don't know, but it all turned out okay. So I was pretty miserable when I was pregnant. I did try to go to pregnancy yoga once a week. And then in the second trimester, I did like a water movement class. It wasn't swimming. Some weeks I could go to both. Some weeks I couldn't if I went to one. Sometimes I was basically down for 2 or 3 days. So very low energy. Because of my age, being in my 40s, being pregnant, by late second and third trimester, I had to go into monitoring twice a week. And usually everything seemed fine. Again, like things seemed fine. And blood work, mostly fine. And doctors thought I looked great. So I think just a lot was just sort of not noticed. And again, I didn't push how exhausted I was and this and that. And again, they could have just been normal, just a difficult pregnancy. Now, late in my second trimester, might have been beginning of third trimester, you do have to get tested for gestational diabetes, which I tested positive for. I had to go through 2 tests. So that was basically affirmation. I mean, that's hormonal. So my whole endocrine system was out of whack. Insulin is a hormone. If that's off, other things can be off. Again, I'm pretty sure I had gestational hypothyroid, though it wasn't diagnosed. Those are your hormones. I think hormones were just all off, and that played out in why the pregnancy was difficult, or the labor was difficult, and the pregnancy. So then I had to deal, the last 3 plus months with testing my blood regularly. My fingertips were so sore. Alternate which fingertips. And I controlled it all by diet. Still getting all the nutrition I needed. But that made it even worse energy-wise, because a diabetic diet is basically a ketogenic diet, and there's so little fuel I could eat, because I would look online and see what other women with gestational diabetes ate, and they could eat a lot more like fruit or bread and things, and I ate like more than like that much banana, and my blood sugar would skyrocket. So even though I was eating enough, I was probably getting in 2,200 calories. Not a ton, but it was enough to get all the nutritional needs, because I was tracking it, all the vitamins and minerals and everything I needed. but so low carb that I didn't even have that to help give me energy throughout the day. So I was, yeah. I mean, you could say I was bedridden, even though I wasn't just lying in bed all the time, although some days were like that. Um, I just had no energy and I had no fuel to help me with the energy. So that was really hard. And I basically had my set meals those last 3 months or so. Because I figured out, okay, I can eat this, I can eat a combination of this and this to get a little bit of fuel in. Um, and it's really a very high fat diet, which you don't, I mean, too high fat a diet, children can be born with arteriosclerosis. So I was a little concerned about that, but I think I did okay. Um, so yeah, the pregnancy was not fun at all. We took a pregnancy class towards the end for, preparing for childbirth. Um, and there's one day we had to go around the room and each person say, what do you enjoy about your pregnancy? And I had to say nothing. I didn't enjoy anything. And I think because my hormones were so out of whack, not just the normal pregnancy out of whack, but like other stuff going on, I felt so little. It was like I felt apathy quite a bit, which is so unusual for me. And I was just like, okay, I got to get through it. Now also, also, sleep during the pregnancy. So from like 22 weeks, about midpoint on, you're not supposed to sleep on your back at all. And even before that point, probably starting in the second trimester, the way I phrased it was that it hurt to sleep. So on my sides, if I slept on my right side, my ear, my arm, my ribs, my hip, my leg, that side would start to hurt. I'd flip over, that side would start to hurt. So I'd get some sleep till the pain was so much I had to turn. And then, of course, 22 weeks onward, you can't really lie on your back. So I would sleep propped up. But that's not always comfortable. And I would just have to lie on my side. But it hurt to sleep. And then by the third trimester, pretty early on in the third trimester, even though they say ideally you sleep on your left-hand side, I could not sleep on my left-hand side because, besides it hurt to sleep on my sides, I would feel a sense of panic, like, no, get up, get up, get up, don't lie on that side. And my baby most of her weight was on the left side, so I think it was either pressuring her or pressuring blood vessels for me. I couldn't lie on my left side. So I could sleep on my right till it hurt so much, and then I had to sleep propped up. So probably a 45-ish degree angle. So sleep was unpleasant throughout my pregnancy. And then on top of that, I still, like, even sleeping, even though I had the house fan going to circulate the cool air, there were times where I would just be like I just felt like I couldn't breathe, even though my rib cage was expanding. I was breathing. I could see that. So I'm like, okay, I'm breathing. But the feeling that I couldn't breathe was just so uncomfortable. I would even like pull my nostril. I would go a lot to just get a big burst of air in. Excuse me. So I would do that. So I didn't sleep well during the pregnancy either, which doesn't help everything else going on, of course. But I did usually take a 2 to 3 hour nap during the day, which seemed to take up the bulk of my day. So just thinking, what else? What else went on during the pregnancy? That was most of it. But it was also interesting in support of my theory that I had gestational hypothyroid as well. Was that I never was like super hot like women get when they're pregnant. I would feel cold normal. Like the pregnancy class we took, I was freezing in that class and I would try to turn the temperature up, and everyone else is like in tank tops and I'm all bundled up. So there were just lots of little things like afterwards, when I was recovering from labor, when I was like doing research, because it was really difficult to like look stuff up online when I was pregnant too, because that made me nauseous. And even like just focusing on things made me nauseous, and I couldn't watch the television. Not that I watch much, because like things moving on the screen would make me dizzy. And I had horrible brain fog. um, yeah, just a lot of things I put together. I was like, I think I also had that. So that's my theory. Um, Now, how I managed a lot of that, um, one, at night when I was sleeping or not able to sleep, we have a guest. Hi. I might have to stop soon. I would say in my head over and over the Medicine Buddha mantra, which is for healing. So I said that, I chanted that in my head fairly continuously throughout my pregnancy to help me heal, stay healthy, to help baby stay healthy throughout the pregnancy. Also, well, then I also tracked my diet, made sure my nutrition was as good as it could be, even though I didn't feel like eating, even though I barely had an appetite. I didn't really get an appetite till the week I discovered I had gestational diabetes, and then I couldn't eat anyway, or I had to totally modify my diet. But just tracking that, even though normally I find it totally annoying, I was just so happy to stop doing that. That helped as well. And calling upon ancestors, my grandmothers, because I know they had difficult pregnancies, asking them for support, for guidance, that helped as well. And so that's not going to be for everyone, especially if you came to this video for just like, oh, let's check out this woman's difficult pregnancy. But I do turn to my spiritual practices to help me through challenges. So the Medicine Buddha mantra from my Buddhist studies. And I have that up on my blog. You can just Google it on YouTube too. A practical thing, tracking my nutrition, making sure that was as good as it could be, drinking tons of water, like they say. That's important too. Getting whatever exercise I could manage. So overall, I probably walk the dogs twice a week, which is not much. And then a little prenatal yoga and a little water class. That was just in the second trimester. I think it was 10 classes. I think I made it to 7 of them. What little I could get, that was important. I also got some massage therapy during my pregnancy, as long as I felt I could manage it. And I think that was helpful too, just to help me relax more. I definitely would sleep a little better those days. But it was hard because in pregnancy massage, you have to lie on your side. But it's a shorter period of time. By the time I would start hurting, we'd be turning over. Excuse me. Still a lingering cough from being sick. Yeah. And then, of course, you know, this may sound strange, you know, just watching, looking for, asking for signs from the universe for guidance. I would just a few times pull tarot cards for me. Just asking, okay, how is labor going to go? From all signs, baby was head down early on. She stayed held down, you know, because I was monitored so much. You know, there was no umbilical cord wrapped around her head. Everything looked good for a natural labor. And so I was like, okay, that's looking good, even though part of me is like, oh, I'll probably have to have a C-section. But when I would do my tarot cards, and again, I only did it a few times because I was so stressed. But it would have cards like the Tower, the Ten of Swords, the Queen of Swords, cards like that. And I was like, I knew it was going to be difficult. And of course, I looked at the astrology, and there was a lot going on in my 8th house. And the 8th house is the house of death, change, and transformation. Because I knew it was going to be difficult. I should also mention the Hanged Man card was very prominent throughout this time. Came up in every reading I did. You know, it wasn't a whole lot, but that was actually the strongest card, the Hanged Man. And the Strength card would come up too. So I knew I would have to let go and not try to control whatever happened. That's the Hanged Man. I knew, though, even though it would be like the Hangman, Tower card, Queen of Swords, which I saw that as surgery. I saw that as a surgeon when I did the readings. Ten of Swords. Yeah, it's going to be life-changing. Yeah, having a child is life-changing, but it was much more than that. But the Strength card always was there in the physical position. And so I felt that was my message, like, I have the strength. I have the strength. So that's what I would tell myself. I have the strength. Whatever happens, I have to let go. I can't try to control how it's going to be. Because, of course, ideally, like the thought, like, oh, it'd be so wonderful, just natural birth. You know, I mean, think maybe 10, 20 years ago, I might have thought a home birth. But I knew I wanted to be in the hospital. I wanted to be where there would be the care I needed. Because I might need that, Nick. I might need that care. So I knew I had the strength, and I would just say that to myself, you have the strength. And I would tell my baby, take whatever you needed, I would recover. But there's always that Hanged Man card. And so I did work on acceptance, because the Hanged Man is very much about acceptance. I did accept I might not make it. And so I wanted my baby to be as healthy as possible. And that's why I told her, you know, all mothers probably think this, but I would really consciously take whatever you needed. Even though I felt drained, depleted, I was like, take what you need. If I survive, I will recover. So that was the pregnancy. And actually, I'm going to stop the video because I need to get something. Okay, so this is going to be the last bit for this video because someone's waiting for me. So this one will just be on the pregnancy, and then the fun stuff begins. So a few weeks before it was past due date, so I gave birth at 41 and a half weeks. But it was a few days past my due date. My husband and I were walking the dogs slowly through the nearby park, and I found this. So I don't know how well you can see it because of the light, but that is a piece of a dandelion, or I call it a wishing flower, and it says wish. I found this, and I knew as I found this is my like observe the signs. I mean, there were some others, but you know, I don't want to talk for hours and hours. I found this, and I knew that my wish would come true. That sounds cheesy. My wish would come true because I found this. This was my message. And my wish was that we both survive. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video here. The pregnancy only. And that's the easy part. So thank you for watching. If you know someone who's not afraid of their pregnancy and they might be inspired by this, I don't know, you can share it. But a lot of people, again, have asked me to share my experience. So this is part 1 of my pregnancy, labor, etc. experience. Thank you for watching this long. I know this is a longer video. Yeah, and I'll see you back here soon.